Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Mild's Culture Plate. This is a special edition episode. Once again, thank you to YouTube and your algorithms on copyrighted material. We will be covering the Vice panel on gun policy with firearms users. Okay, so let's jump right into it and see what has to be said here. Oh, we have music. Okay, let's try.
Vice News. Obviously, we couldn't get somebody to represent every single perspective on this, but we've tried to get across the range here. And we're here today to talk about
Across the range. Very apt word. No.
guns. It's a polarizing topic. It can be a controversial topic. And I think in some ways, arguing about what to do about guns and gun policy is about as American as apple pie.
This guy must not have eaten very many apple pies.
Raise your hand if you've ever shot a gun. Now, keep your hand up if you currently own a gun. All right? Keep your hand up if you own more than...
So those two ladies don't own guns. I'm try to remember this here. I've watched I kind of had most of this video playing in the background while I was doing research for one of my shows earlier this week. So I've heard some of what they're saying, but a lot of it was just background noise, and I don't remember exactly how heated things got. I didn't watch the end of this either, so I'm kind of going into this a little fresh, but with a little skepticism here because I did hear a few of the arguments that were being made, and woo boy.
Than one gun. Keep your hand up if you own more than 10 guns. Keep your hand up if you own any AR-15s. How does shooting a gun make you feel?
I feel powerful.
Only the one lady has an AR-15. Okay, I'll get into it later. I know they're going to get into it, but right off the bat, the fact that they're singling out AR-15s, you know this is going to be fucking bad, right?
I feel confident.
Fun is pretty much what I'm thinking about and what I'm feeling when I'm
confident. Fun.
It's like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility.
Facts.
Determined, I guess, when I pick up a gun. Loaded, not loaded. Am I shooting? Am I shooting responsibly?
It's always been a very neutral experience for me.
Neutral.
Things like that, where it's just about doing everything correctly.
Yeah.
I usually feel tired after shooting a lot. A lot of the training is extensive, and as an instructor, I'm usually also teaching while I'm shooting firearms.
If shooting a gun is exhausting, like teaching people to shoot guns is even more exhausting.
But it's exciting because you can empower somebody else. Like, after you may feel tired and exhausted, but these people might be that much safer because of what you taught them. How many?
Okay, so I want to stop it there and just say, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm doing this video right after my Saturday stream, in which you've noticed I'm wearing the same Kansas City Chiefs gear here. And I've already had quite a bit of whiskey. So we're rolling with this, man. I'm going to keep on drinking the Angel's Envy, and we're going to keep rolling. This is going to be a long night.
How many of y'all are longtime gun owners? Raise your hands. And how many are new gun owners who've just got into gun ownership and shooting? Okay.
I grew up around them, but I recently moved somewhere where I could personally own them.
I started, closer to 2018, 2019, when I just turned 18 years old and was legally allowed to buy guns. I did not grow up around guns. I started owning them because of different political conditions that we were under.
I think.
Okay, I mean, I don't know. You see, again, Vice likes to cut juicy parts out when they're juicy and leave other juicy parts because they're juicy. I wonder if she actually elaborated on that in real time and it got left on the cutting room floor.
The reason why I don't own a gun, even though it always felt like a given, I grew up in San Antonio, and as a first-generation American growing up, I wanted to be a good American. I wanted to observe what everyone else is doing and be like, okay, that's how you be an American. That's how you do it. But then I went out to a really big defensive shooting training. It's like 1,000 rounds over a weekend, lots of like pressure exercises. And I was like, this is a whole lifestyle that I'm not willing to take up.
Can we talk about...
Notice she said defensive training. And then she called it a lifestyle. Make no mistake, a gun is a tool, right? In the right hands, it's a tool used for good. In the wrong hands, it's a weapon used for bad. The idea that you would go through an extensive threat assessment and safety training and marksmanship and I'm assuming these were all components of her weekend experience that she's talking about, and come away with, oh, it's a lifestyle that I don't want. As if this is like a swinger lifestyle or a nerd culture lifestyle, like, oh, you know, it's a hobby like playing fucking Magic the Gathering. Like the idea of being caught in a mass shooter situation or being caught in a liquor store robbery and being able to respond in a self-defensive manner is a fucking lifestyle choice. Lady, you have a lot of privilege in this world to be able to just say no.
Why you guys chose to own guns?
Law enforcement.
Yeah, similar. I'm military or former military and carried a handgun concealed while I was deployed at 19.
I grew up in rural Virginia, and so for us, it was more of tradition.
So we have law enforcement, military, and now tradition.
First firearm I received or owned was the first firearm my father owned, which was a hunting rifle. And so for us, we were taught to take care of it, appreciate it, but know that it has a place.
My dad grew up in rural Pennsylvania, so, I mean, he was shooting his whole life.
Let me address that for just a second. To know that it has a place. I'm assuming he means know that it's a tool that has a certain use and that it's not necessarily something you just take down and play with like you would other hobbies and toys, you know, like these action figures behind me. You know, I could kind of just grab Batman and just, you know, take this here Batarang out of his hand and, you know, set him up on a shelf and take pictures of him in weird, I mean, it's a statue, so he's posed a certain way. But, you know, I could take him down and play with him whenever I want. And while definitely I could take a gun out of my safe and clean it and, you know, make sure the you know, make sure that it's still operational. It's not a fucking toy. It has its place. And you don't just do that anywhere at any time. You do that in a safe environment. Anyway.
Life, he hunted, and so he thought it was important for us to learn pretty young kind of about guns and how they work.
When I was growing up, it was always the bad guys that had guns, and I felt like I didn't have the emotional maturity at that time to own guns. But as I got older, I started seeing it more as recreation. And then as, you know, the climate in the world changed and events happened in my life, I started to really be empowered by the security that they offered for me.
Let's think about that for a minute. When she grew up with the idea that only bad guys had guns. What kind of culture teaches that a tool can only be used by bad guys? What kind of environment, what kind of household, what kind of parents are involved in a life where... Now look, I grew up in a household where there were no guns. Don't get me wrong. There were guns from time to time, but it wasn't like it was a must-have. I wish it was a must-have. Some events in my life might have gone differently. But parental figures that were in my life from time to time didn't feel a need. We felt like society was relatively safe, or at least our little niche parts of society were relatively safe enough where self-defense wasn't an important trait. Since I've become an older adult, I kind of disagree. And so I'm wondering where that line was for her.
Well, I actually used to be a gun control activist, and there were certain events that were happening where violence against trans women was, increasing across the country. And there was this one video that went viral where a trans woman was violently mobbed in a gas station one night, and that was a clicking moment for me. At that moment, I was like, you know what? The only thing that would have stopped her from this violent mob was, in fact, a gun.
How does this
Get strapped or get clapped? I mean, look, I may disagree with some of the philosophies being promoted by the transgender agenda in the United States right now. But again, I go back to what I've said previously about transgenders. I still believe you're a human being and you have a right to a peaceful life. And sometimes that right to a peaceful life for anyone might include protecting yourself, might include self-defense. So get strapped or get clapped.
the Second Amendment affect the way that you view gun ownership as a right in this?
Okay, I know somebody's going to say it, but I'm going to say it first here. The Second Amendment, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, let's just say the Bill of Rights, philosophically are given to you by your Creator, not by a piece of paper, not by the government. Your rights are your special abilities as a human being given to you by your Creator. It's like a muscle. You exercise that muscle. It's part of who you are, part of your body, part of your humanity is your human rights given to you by God, just as your muscle was given to you by God to exercise. Fuck the Second Amendment. Fuck the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Second Amendment. Your right to self-defense was given to you by God. Now, I'm not telling you to operate outside the laws of the United States. I'm merely stating a fact that your right to self-defense was given to you by God. So this distraction of the Second Amendment, and don't get me wrong, I am a big proponent of the Second Amendment. It's how we sort our rights given by God in a just government by adopting a constitution. But make no mistake, discussion about government policy is a distraction from the fact that these are rights given to you. And again, if you're atheist, your Creator. Could be the vaginal canal. As soon as you pop out and you're a human being with muscles, with tendons, with bones, with eyesight. And a government, just as a government shouldn't unjustly take away your eyesight, a government should not unjustly take away your other rights.
Country.
I think my right to defend myself how I see fit comes from my Creator, not the Second Amendment.
Here we go.
A lot of people hinge on the Second Amendment and the verbiage, and we dissect it and we try to interpret it. But ultimately, every person on this planet was born with the right to defend themselves.
I don't have any skin in the game. I don't own guns. So as far as 2A goes, I do not feel like that is a right that I personally want to protect or defend.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so let's go back. Look at the way this person is dressed. Just take a fucking look at the way this person is dressed. The fucking tattoos on the fucking neck. The earrings. The fluffy hairstyle. The studded baseball cap. if you were to list any other civil rights or abilities of humans, would this person say, I got no skin in the game when it comes to health care. I got no skin in the game when it comes to the right to marry. Do you think this person would be saying those things? This is what disgusts me about the far left. It's the inability to be empathetic. It's the inability to think, okay, I have no skin in the game, but this seems like a really fucking important thing to a lot of other people. Why is that? The ability to take that fucking thought and that empathy and think it through and wonder why other people give so much of a shit about their rights. This should be the first person standing up for other people's rights. Instead, I have no skin in the game.
2A goes, I do not feel like that is a right that I personally want to protect or defend.
I feel very conflicted about the Second Amendment. At the end of the day, when we talk about the Constitution as like this sacred document, I mean, it was written by a bunch of rich white guys who owned slaves, didn't let women vote, and thought the Electoral College was a good idea.
Okay, jackass. Let's fucking take those three things and address them. First off, the Electoral College was a fucking wonderful idea. Because the alternative to a republic where you're represented by districts and carved up segments of geographical society is the fucking popular vote. And the fucking popular vote, no matter how many ways you slice it, is fucking communism. It's the rule of the majority. It's the idea that 60% of the people can tell 40% of the people they don't have fucking rights. Is that what you really fucking want? And as far as white slave owners, there were black slave owners back then. Again, they weren't the ones writing the Constitution, so that's not part of your valid criticism, and I'm not going to go there. But the idea that, okay, because, and definitely there are a lot of people who would make the argument that people like Jefferson and Washington were trying to make advancements for abolitionism. I'm not going to necessarily make that argument either. I'm going to steelman your argument and simply say that even if I were to steelman your argument and say these were hateful, evil slave owners, that it was so long ago that they couldn't fathom the universe we live in now, no. And that's why this show is what this show is, because I don't deal in that kind of bullshit. Because at the root of every problem is an ideology and a philosophy. And just because the root of slavery had a certain ideology and philosophy behind it, if you read the Constitution and you read the promise of the Declaration of Independence and the promise of America and the way America was supposed to grow, the idea that we have this amendment process to change the hurtful things about our past. Do you think Great Britain has an amendment process for the fucking dictates of the King of England? No. But we have a representatively proportional system where different regions, different people can conflict, but yet come together and decide what's best for all of society. They can come together and debate. Unfortunately, party fucking politics have taken over, and it's become this fucking completely split thing. When most people are like me, it's a mixed bag. I don't fucking trust Republicans. I don't fucking trust Democrats. But what I do trust is the ideology of the promise that America was supposed to get better. And that's why the Bill of Rights was written. You want to shit on constitutional rights because the pen that put them down on paper might have been a slave owner's pen. Well, I say fuck the pen. Fuck the slave owner. Look at the philosophy. Look at the ideology and ask yourself, is this a creator-given right? So fuck you, sir.
So maybe it's not a perfect document, and we should kind of update it as time progresses.
Oh, imagine that. Updated as time progresses. Yes, we have an amendment process, motherfucker. You don't like the Second Amendment? Good luck. Get 2/3 of the states and 2/3 of Congress to overturn the fucking Second Amendment.
It's my right to defend myself. There is an ample amount of time between the time
Good
you call
luck.
the police and the time that they arrive. It's my right to be able to protect myself in any way possible.
Okay, so we went from talking about the Second Amendment, and now she's talking about my right to defend myself. Not really a Second Amendment argument, but...
As a survivor of gun violence, I can't help but to think about how many people have been lost because of this perceived right or this outdated document. I feel like...
Wait, you're a gun owner, yet you think other gun owners' rights are causing people to lose lives.
Like this debate around the Second Amendment is oversimplifying a really serious and complex issue. And unfortunately, there's too many privileged individuals having these debates, making these decisions who aren't feeling the pain of what gun violence in our country has done to us.
I'm sure this is going to come up later. But let me just take everything he said at face value. Okay. You realize that same argument could be flipped on its head. Like your rights as an African American, well, there are certain African Americans who exercise their rights irresponsibly. So therefore, we can't just boil the problem of crime down to African Americans should have rights. No, we've already had that debate. We solved that debate with the philosophy that all men are created equal. Just like we've already solved the gun debate with Congress shall make no law, or well, I guess that's the First Amendment, but with the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. We've solved that problem already. And yes, it is reducing it down to a very simplistic thing, and yes, it's a very complex issue. But unfortunately, you have to adapt a philosophy that works for the majority of society, and the majority of society being disarmed is not the answer. Thank you. Play again.
Connecticut, 2 officers were shot and killed. One guy is firing 80 rounds. One guy. I don't know if those 2 cops combined had 80 rounds. Now, I don't know how else they would have defended themselves other than a firearm, but it also comes out to who gets it out first. You know, personally, forget law enforcement, I have a 4.5-year-old son. I want to have a chance that, God forbid, I'm in a store and I see somebody down an aisle, or I hear a sound that sounds like a firearm, that there's a good chance that at least my son's going to survive.
We're in a world where we are literally out-arming who's supposed to be protecting us. And
Okay, hang on. Let me let him finish that sentence because I know exactly where I'm going to go with this.
it's all coming from a place of fear. If we're thinking about how to protect our homes or to protect our families, there are better, lower risk ways to do that. And as someone who's been shot, having a gun on me would have not saved my life. If it
Okay. So he said three things there that I disagree with all three. One, we're out arming the people that are supposed to protect us. Police do not have a duty to protect you, sir. That is a misnomer. The Supreme Court has ruled as such. The police do not have a duty to protect you. Secondly, the idea that that police force cannot be turned into an army against its own citizens, as we've just seen in a tragedy in Tennessee, I believe, Memphis. The idea that we shouldn't have access to be able to defend ourselves against the threat of people who claim to be our saviors. Again, this is not meant to be offensive to police officers out there. I'm not calling you our enemy. But should that day come when the government turns against the people, the people have a right to defend themselves. It is your duty to defend yourself. It's not something you can outsource to some government agency. And now the third thing you said. If I had a gun, it wouldn't have protected me that day that I was a victim of gun violence. You don't know that. You can assume that, but you don't know that.
If anything, it would have cost me my life, because it gives you this false concept of confidence in a life or death situation when your first instinct should be to flee or evade.
So you're saying you ran for your life instead of having a shootout. There are lots of people who own guns who would rather run from a shootout than sit in a vulnerable position and exchange fire with a deadly threat. If you're not smart enough to make that decision, then yeah, perhaps you shouldn't own a gun. But there are lots of people who have been trained in de-escalation and retreat.
What are your ideas about other cost-effective ways to defend yourself?
Well, when we think about defending your home or your body or from harm or assault, the most impactful thing you can have is a known deterrent. A gun is not a known deterrent. And so...
Bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. It's not a deterrent to people like you, right? It wasn't a deterrent in Kyle Rittenhouse's case with Joseph Rosenbaum, right? Joseph Rosenbaum was just crazy enough to attack someone holding an AR-15. But for 90% of society, somebody open carrying, that's someone I'm not looking to escalate an altercation with. So to say that a gun is not a known deterrent when immediately your thought, you look at the gun and think, oh yeah, no. Bullshit.
But when we think about keeping our home safe specifically,
and again, I'm interested in hearing what kind of deterrents, what kind of things he thinks are deterrents. I'm curious.
Simple things like having a dog, having the lights on, having a fence, having a security system, a security camera is more effective at protecting your homes.
See, having worked in security, I can tell you that everything that guy just said was bullshit. He's semi-correct. Those things are deterrents, but if they see you carrying your flashy new TV inside your house, they know where your cameras are. They know what they've watched long enough to see your routine with your dogs. They know when you go to bed. They know you're going to sleep with the lights on. He just said keep your lights on. You're going to sleep with your lights on. You're going to run up your electricity bill. You keep lights on, big shining floodlights on every side of your house so that none of your entry points can be penetrated. And if you think someone willing to murder you over a TV gives two shits about whether or not you see the ski mask he's wearing on a fucking security camera, you're fucking mistaken. Your dog can be shot just like you can be shot. Your dog can be neutralized in other ways. This guy is full of shit.
What do you guys think are actual, like, good ideas in terms of gun regulation, if any?
The question I have is, are we going after the guns or are we going after the people that are using them illegally? The second something happens, they don't talk about the person that committed the crime, but if someone's not on the opposite side of the gun, it will never go off unless the trigger is pulled. And I think there needs to be more accountability, whether legally or not legally used. There needs to be accountability for people to say, wait a minute, if I do something really dumb with this or hurt somebody, I might not see the light of day for a while.
We've created this image in America, and I partially blame the media, that violence in black communities is a result of criminal activity, when in reality, most situations are interpersonal conflicts that are not connected to another felony. And that false sense of having a firearm will make me safer turns what would have been a fist fight, an argument, into something that causes someone their life.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. I really was wanting to address what the other guy said, but then he, boom, jumped right in with something completely fucking unrelated to what the guy was saying. He was talking about accountability. Is this person breaking a law? Well, then that person breaking a law is breaking yet another law by breaking a law while holding a firearm. That's not a law-abiding gun owner. That's not somebody carrying for self-defense. And we want to conflate the two. And this guy speaks up and wants to talk about what's happening in the black community and interpersonal violence. Well, why is there interpersonal violence? Why does being the big dog and beefing with someone, why does that carrying a gun for confidence, why does that exist? Do you think that happens in a vacuum? Do you think that happens in other cultures? Do you think that happens in other neighborhoods? It happens in war-torn countries, maybe. But it happens in a vacuum of oppressed people feeling they have to use violence to gain status. Period. You're not going to see those things happening if everyone's carrying. The idea is you know someone's not going to be carrying, and now you've got the one up, right? You've got the plus one now. To where if you get into a situation where you're throwing hands and they get you real good, now you got one up on them. But no one ever asks, why were you throwing hands to begin with? Why were you escalating to begin with? Why were you so fucking prideful that you never considered de-escalation or walking away or, you know, we have made beef and insults and so much a part of American daily life that we can't just fucking be. We can't just let shit go. We can't brush shit off our shoulders and be like, hey, at least I'm breathing another day. Don't play stupid games.
Move your finger and you end a human life. That's a responsibility that we should take a lot more seriously in this country. You get convicted of domestic violence. No guns for you. Universal background checks, I think, would be a great idea. And I think the idea that we don't treat something that was created for killing people with that kind of respect is a really weird disconnect in this country.
I think a big...
Oh, this motherfucker. This motherfucker. Okay. First, you want to shit on the Constitution. Then you want to claim guns were made to kill people. No. No. Guns were made to fire projectiles. It's a fucking tool. Said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's a fucking tool. Whether you're using it to hunt, whether you're a police officer using it to shoot a lock to fucking break into a home, I mean, that's not so much of a thing, but I mean, it's a thing in the movies. Just saying. It's a fucking high-speed projectile. Not necessarily, its primary function is not necessarily to tear through human flesh. That's one use, but there are other uses for a high-speed projectile. You fucking dipshit.
Big problem with people have with like universal background checks, acquiring regulation and accreditation. I teach and I give out certificates and all that, but states have been sued for the fact that they won't give it to BIPOC. They won't give it to poor people. They won't give these rights to trans people. You start denying these rights and like, oh, well, we regulate this, but we only give it to the rich and we only give it to the well-connected, right? And then
this guy starts off with probably the fucking best point one could make, and then takes a fucking huge left turn with it. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. The next question becomes, well, yeah, but how many people in those communities are on mental health altering drugs or are seeking treatment for psychological conditions? I don't think it's a 1-to-1, right? I don't think it's a zero-sum issue of, well, we're just denying rights to trans people outright, or we're just denying rights to poor people outright. I think it comes with, well, are you seeking therapy for something that may be wrong with you here? And if so, well, then we're going to take away your rights. Now, I'm a Second Amendment purist. I think veterans, while risky, some have PTSD. Sometimes veterans have some serious psychological issues. But you fought for this country. You should have your human rights to defend yourself with a weapon. I don't like all this game playing and government deciding what lists to put people on. So that's where I agree with this guy. Whether it's white people or rich people, or whether it's poor, people of color, trans people, nobody should be put on lists determining who gets human rights.
on the other side, we don't make education available to all these people that can't afford it. Like, why isn't it free? Why can't you go down to City Hall and take a class on how to teach your kids about...
I don't know where this guy lives, but near me there are several firearm ranges and other Second Amendment supporting organizations who do safety seminars where you're not exactly firing the weapon, but you do get to learn about respect for the weapon, the rules, safety, and then if you want to proceed from there, you can pay for safety courses. They're not super expensive, but they're cheaper than a fucking karate class. They're cheaper than Taekwondo. They're cheaper than some Magic the Gathering tournaments. If you're going to waste your time doing all this other shit, it's cheaper than 2 months of Netflix, one of these safety courses where you do get to handle the weapon. So this idea that, well, it's just priced out of the market for poor people. I mean, granted, maybe poor people aren't playing as much Magic the Gathering or going to karate tournaments or doing these other things. Sure. If you want to make that your argument, sure. But it's not like the prices are that insane for what they are offering. And there are a lot of them that do offer the basics for free. So that at the very least, you're not fucking holding your finger in the fucking trigger with bad trigger discipline, flagging people. Come on now. Learn the basics.
Firearm safety, kind of gotten rid of all of that. We've kind of moved to an abstinence-only education culture. If you have someone in your community who commits a crime, it's the community's fault. Like, how did that person get to that point?
A lot of folks here say that they own guns as a self-defense tool. How do we feel about that?
Shit is so bleak in America. Like,
You voted for Joe Biden. That's how we got there.
I don't blame people for feeling unsafe. Everyone here is concerned with survival. Everyone who picks up a gun is concerned with survival. There is this sense of despair in America when it comes to resource scarcity, food scarcity, housing scarcity, scarcity of care. People do not resort to terrible things when they have support, when they have a community, when they feel like their survival is not at stake.
It's an abundance mentality. What she's talking about is it's an abundance mentality, right? When there's an abundance of rights, when there's an abundance of resources, when there's an abundance of let's say empathy and care for one another, when there's an abundance of mental health in a culture, when there's an abundance of just civilization, people aren't super concerned with survival. But when you start having people having mental health crisis, homelessness, people starving, people being underfed, people in certain communities just not having jobs, not being able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, felons not being able to find gainful employment. Now you've created a situation where people become desperate. And when people become desperate, they're willing to do more and more things they might not have done if resources, empathy, and civilization weren't scarce. And unfortunately, that's the direction our society is going right now.
In America, the two solutions that are introduced are too heavily focused on the individual and the gun. But a solution we never introduce is regulating the gun industry and the profiteers of massive amount of weapons being
this bitch.
introduced into America. And I think that's something that in America we're not talking about. We're not talking about how do we hold the profiteers, the gun capitalists accountable in this conversation.
The gun capitalists. Come on. Look, I'm not saying Smith & Wesson is hurting for money. I'm not going there. What I'm saying is, what's the alternative? Are we supposed to forge our own fucking barrels and uppers and lowers and, are we supposed to forge our own gun parts and piece them together? I mean, we're about to see a revolution. I mean, we're kind of on the cusp of an evolution with people making 3D printed weapons and, but again, people want to regulate those. So where are you at on that, lady? You want to make gun manufacturers responsible. That's the fucking best way to do it. Allow us to 3D print their competition. But again, you just want a monster to rail against and not an actual fucking solution.
Forget to talk about white nationalism and the fact that this country was a settler colonial country based on taking land from indigenous people and suppressing enslaved people. Gun conversation, as soon as you wade into it, is so frickin' racist.
Oh no. She went there, y'all. She went there, y'all. Settlers were murdering the indigenous with guns. Sure. I don't have an answer for that. I mean, look, the Constitution is what it is. History is what it is. That doesn't change how the Second Amendment affects our society today.
It's really misogynistic, and when we really start to zoom in on this stuff, we find levers. We can better identify where threats come from, what kinds of discourse really start to put us in danger. And actually, the gun industry lobbies a lot and pays for the campaigns of a lot of people who condone this kind of culture. And so that's one lever in which I think we need to put a lot more scrutiny on.
I agree.
The gun lobby. The gun lobby. Oh my God. You know how many lobbies there are coming the other fucking direction? I mean, look, I rail on the banks. The banks are the biggest lobby there is. They're the biggest control mechanism there is for society. And they're also the ones pulling the strings on all those wealth and scarcity issues we were just talking about a second ago. But no, it's the big bad gun corporations and gun lobbyists.
With a lot of things from what everybody else said, but I feel like a lot of the gun control issues drown out the actual issues. Like, let's take school shootings, for example. School shootings are awful, they're horrible. But here's my question. What has been done to make schools more secure? I do executive protection and armed security, and I've been offered countless times jobs at schools. They pay $12, $13, $14 an hour. A single mother with 2 kids, that's not an amount I can work for, nor does it reflect my value as a security officer. But what is being done for it? We're not paying security extra. We're not, doing single.
Okay, she's getting off on so many fucking topics that mean jack and shit. Look, lady, you're talking about distractions, and you're literally distracting from whatever the hell point you're trying to get to. I think she's trying to make the same kind of argument that I was making earlier, that security only goes so far. But I think what she's trying to get at is there's an underfunding and underfocus on securing children. I don't know.
Points of entry. We're not reinforcing the perimeters. We're not doing any of those things. We're focusing on gun control, and yet when this happens again, we're confused as to why it happened again, because nothing was done to stop the problem.
I don't think...
Okay, schools are gun-free zones. I mean, she's got a point. When Sandy Hook happened, nobody scrutinized the security measures that the school had in place. And now we've had several school shootings since then, and people still are scrutinizing the AR-15 and not the security measures we put in place for these children. There are a lot of schools now discussing arming staff, not necessarily teachers, but staff. There's some that have said teachers can be armed. Let me tell you, you're not going to have someone stupid enough to do this unless they're really fucking out of their mind.
Turning schools into fortresses, having more armed security is the solution here. I'd rather have a part-time school counselor than a full-time, resource officer.
There are counselors, though.
But are they? Like, when you put a police officer in a school, you're creating an environment where you're putting students in jail or in prison instead of going after the problems.
What the fuck is this guy even talking about? Oh, we need a school counselor. Oh, we got a school counselor. But do we? Yes, we fucking do. The problem is school counselors aren't there to give mental health treatment to the students. I mean, we'd like to believe that they can do that in a pinch, that they can be an outlet. All too often, they tend to be more guidance counselors who guide their curricular future and help them pick a college or whatever. They're not necessarily there to help with a mental health issue. They can in a pinch, but generally they're not there for mental health issues. That's what the parents are there for. And that's what a communication between a parent and the school is supposed to accomplish. But those things don't exist anymore because we don't want parents to be involved in their kids' curriculum, because we have all these gender fluid weirdos on TikTok wanting parents to be less involved. So I don't know what the answer is, but gentlemen, you know, your idea that student resource officers are there to make arrests tells me that you have a really jaded view and a really twisted view of what you think happens in school offices every day.
Instead of spending money on lockdown drills, crisis actors, we could give them more food security. Community garden is probably going to go way.
Wait, did he just say crisis actors?
After the problems. Instead of spending money on lockdown drills, crisis actors.
Lockdown drills.
More food security. Community garden is probably going to go way farther for their mental health than simulating gunfire in the hallways. If we do have school shooters, well, where are they coming from? They're coming from the school. We're letting these kids down. We're showing them the rehearsal, and then what? Tragedy?
Look at where the money.
Oh, motherfucker. Okay, so they plant a garden and someone still shoots up the school. Then what? Then what? Just let them be fodder? Let them die? I mean, dude, you're not even making sense. Now let's see what this weirdo has to say.
In the communities is going already, and that's law enforcement who want more money and more weapons to make everyone safer, inflated crime statistics, whatever it takes. Because sadly, this works in elections. It works on parents. It works on families who don't know what else to do. But there are so many places to put money in a community, and we are starving those places out of existence.
I want to ask Joey, as a police officer, when you hear
Put places to put money in a community. Now this is one of the biggest misnomers that happens in political discussions in our society. Resources matter. Attention matters. Throwing truckloads of cash at a problem doesn't really matter. And this is part of my problem with education, is we think funding is what's going to cure all the problems at schools, when all too often it's a waste and misdirection problem. Just as they're discussing here, you know, like we're focused in the wrong areas of life. Well, sometimes we're focused in the wrong areas of education. Sometimes we're focused on the wrong resources to make an education system better. And unfortunately, what this person says, you know, that we have areas of society that are starving for resources or whatever. Yeah, sometimes that's the right thing. It keeps them honest. I mean, I'm not saying completely starve them to where they don't exist, but sometimes charities can get overblown and off track and promote the thing they're supposed to be against, because, well, you always got to have that devil, right? You always got to have that devil to fight. So as long as that problem isn't solved, we still have a place in society where we can continue to ask for donations. And so I think there's a happy medium where, yeah, you're kind of funneling resources to the right places and you're making a dent in the problems of society, but you're also scrambling for how to allocate those funds in the best way possible because there aren't enough to go around. There aren't enough funds to just waste or steal or make part of my pet project as the director of a organization or something. Like I can't just decide to take these funds and funnel them in one direction. I have to spread that cheddar around to make sure needs are getting met. I can't use these funds to make the problem seem worse so that then I could go to a charity dinner and beg more rich people for more slush fund money. Unfortunately, like I said, the solution isn't always more money. The solution is having smarter people and people who are empathetic deciding where that money goes.
This group talking about cops getting money that they might not put to good use. How does that sit with you?
It's hard. No one sees what police officers are doing every single day. They hear a news clip, they get 10 seconds of what happened in a 5-minute situation right off the bat. Do I think we need to change and move ahead with the times? 100%. You can't go today with what happened 20 years ago, but you can't also criticize all the time and say, well, take away cops altogether, because that's not going to work.
I did not say that cops should be taken.
And right on cue, the police officer guy hears one thing and assumes another. And I'm about to agree with the weirdo in the back corner.
In a way altogether. This is an area that resists reform, resists regulation. We don't get to see the inner workings of everything. We can give cops body cams, but we can't make them switch them on. And any government body that refuses to be regulated, that resists transparency, should not be increasingly armed, should not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, weirdo leftist person. And again, I hate that I continue to call you a weirdo. My apologies. Let me de-escalate that and be a little more kind, a little more empathetic to you, because you are making a really fucking good point here. But I get the vibe you're a little bit on the left. Let me tell you about the left. The left likes unions. And right now, one of the worst aspects of policing is the fact that the unions will go to bat to fight accountability for individual officers. Unions don't like the idea that individual police officers may be filmed 24/7 when they're on duty. Nonstop, continuously when they're on duty. So the things you're advocating for, transparency, the idea that now you have a human being who has his whole career on tape that can be addressed at any point in time, that's a frightening revelation for most of us. Like, you can never truly be yourself at your job. Now, I would tend to agree with you. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you shouldn't be you if you're in this capacity where you're carrying weapons and enforcing a certain standard upon the rest of society. But what do I know? I'm just some dude trying to figure it all out like the rest of you.
Not be increasingly funded. If you want respect, transparency is the way. If you want people to trust you, you have to show them why you're trustworthy. But we need so much more from police.
There's a lot of oversight and accountability that I don't see with the police. And police are people. People have the full range of what they're capable of. And
yeah. I mean, look, on the one hand, I agree, but on the other hand, like, you're just stating the obvious. And granted, maybe this guy needs to hear it. Maybe he needs to hear that, yeah, you're fucking cops and cops can be flawed too, and maybe your flaws can be pointed out. Because quite often, and, this is where I would agree with, some of the other weird spectrum of our political, that they feel that their lives and their choices in life are so visible and overanalyzed. Like the LGBT community, they feel if they make a change in their life that it's so visible and so overanalyzed that they're now exposed, right? So if you come out as gay, if you be public as a gay person, like you're once you're out, you're out. People will have opinions about you. But yet a cop gets to go home, take the uniform off, and have some time in his car where the cameras aren't on and stop at a burger joint and sit and eat. But he's still a police officer. It's still a lifestyle. And where we draw that line between transparency and accountability and you're a human being who gets to go home at night and be, just an average person, I don't know where that line should be drawn. Honestly, if it were up to me, the police would just have less to do. Like, do less. Do less. Investigate crimes. Don't try to fucking intervene in every little fucking dispute.
And we have seen enough evidence that there are police officers who abuse that power. And I think that the real fact that there is no oversight and ability to ensure that they are doing their jobs well is a real problem with people who are licensed to kill.
But that's false, though. You would make it seem like cops are running rampant. There's a lot more oversight than people know, whether it's federally, city-wise, and there are bad apples, and there's people out there that should not be police officers, and there's nothing more.
As long as qualified immunity exists, everything he's saying here is bullshit. Until a cop either has to be insured or vulnerable to a lawsuit, that accountability means jack shit. You're only accountable to your union and to the government agency that employed you. This federal oversight shit, that's all politics. That's all shit that your chief has to deal with. You as an officer, you may have to sit in some uncomfortable meetings with shrinks and internal affairs people and shit like that. But for the most part, you have the most protection of anyone when it comes to a violent interaction.
More than a good cop that doesn't want a bad cop on the street. The oversight, there's a lot more than people know.
But we have to take everyone's word for it, though, from inside.
I don't know what that means.
I'm saying that you're saying that there's lots of oversight. But again, we just have to believe that, because anytime someone from outside attempts to explore that, it's obstruction 100% of the way.
I wouldn't agree with that.
You don't have to agree with it. I mean, it's the guy's telling the truth. I mean, if every police department would just had open records, but they don't, and with good reason, because you're investigating our lives, and our lives aren't necessarily for public examination. But again, as technology advances, yeah, maybe we should have fucking cameras on you all the time.
I really struggle with this concept that we have to fund communities or fund police. No, we have the resources to fund these communities, to fund solutions that we know work, to invest
I disagree.
in education, to invest in violence intervention in victims. Like, we're not willing to prioritize life, then we're going to pay the cost on the back end. And one other thing,
I can agree with that part.
I think we have to remember that this is not just a crime crisis. 2/3 of lives lost are lost by suicide with guns. This is really a public health crisis, and we keep pivoting back to crime control strategies.
I mean, the guy makes a good point there with suicides as well. Let me, before he gets too far off of his first topic, I want to address that real quick. The idea that we just can fund everything, no. We're about to face a serious debt crisis in this country where our government has ran up the credit card to insane levels, and we're going to be paying the piper. We're already paying the piper. Look at the cost of eggs. Look at the cost of precious metals. Look at the cost of vehicles. Look at the cost of milk. Right now, fuel has taken a dip because of speculators and because of strategically draining our strategic reserves. But that's tap's going to dry up at some point. No, we can't just fund everything. That's a misnomer. But yeah, we do need to prioritize. And we are supposed to be electing people smart enough to figure out what's what. The problem is they're more focused on electric vehicles, which are, you know, they're focused on stuff like that and not the real issues facing the average American. And that's a problem with your politicians and who you are voting for.
Strategies, and it's failing.
No, you nailed it. We're the richest country in the world, and we can't make sure everyone is secure in their life, doesn't have fears. You want to sell less guns? Make people less fearful. People plan for their fears. Why do people buy guns? Well, they want to feel safer. Well, why do they need to feel safer? Well, because of their community. It's just okay, what can we do for their community, right?
And so far you haven't said a single thing correct, but that I would agree with. We could get to a point. Now, if I had it my way, my ideal, you fucking utopia, you get to that point and everyone owns a gun anyway, right? You get to this socialist utopia where nobody needs their needs met, but you still own a gun as a deterrent for war. You still own a gun as, instead of just having food delivered to your house every day, go out and hunt once in a blue moon. It's still important to have these skills just in case society goes awry. You try to build the perfect society, but you also try to continue to have the skills you would have if society were to collapse.
Do not believe that police can in any means provide security and safety for us. And a huge part of, wanting to own guns is an aspect of, police failing us. And so to suggest that it's anecdotals, that it's just a couple of bad apples within the system is completely incorrect. We have seen the system fail people and fail to really protect individuals. And so this suggestion that we can fund both our sense of security and our sense of safety, as well as funding the police departments, is completely false, because a huge aspect of our safety being a detriment is, in fact, the police state's initiatives.
What changes would...
Look, it's better to have a gun in the hand than a cop on the phone. When seconds matter, cops are hours away. These are things that are said by, gun in the gun debate a lot. And it's important to know that. It's important to know that when you're speeding down the highway, you know the spots, right? You know the spots in your town. Like at just around lunchtime, that cop's always fucking sitting there. Like that's their hiding spot. Like you've been caught there. Your cousin's been got there. Like that same spot, there's always a fucking cop. They can do it with traffic. But using analytics, figuring out where the murders are happening, figuring out where the gang violence is happening. Having cops frequent those businesses that are getting robbed on the regular. En masse, have 3 or 4 cops show up, hang out for a couple hours, have a cup of coffee and a donut. No. Our police departments want to charge local business owners for that service. It's a money grab. Anyway.
Make a difference in the real world, practically speaking. Kendra, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm a range safety officer, and as long as I've worked on the range, I have seen police come there and train once, right before their qual, or not even, they only come for their qualification. And I have some friends that they train pretty often, but the vast majority, I outshoot them by hundreds of rounds. And I just don't understand that. I do situational training. I do verbal judo so that I know how to de-escalate situations when I encounter them. And I feel like that's what the police force is missing. They need that consistent training with current events that are going on, with different situations, with their...
I mean, look, local police departments kind of have their own ranges too. Some of them do. So I don't know how much stake to put in this lady's claim. I'm going to actually let this play for just a minute and step away just to take care of something real quick. I'll be right back, but I will respond to what they are saying.
Firearms so that they can better protect us. That's what they're there for, and there's no getting rid of them.
I disagree. The firearm is the last tool a police officer uses. I hope Joey agrees. If they're only spending one day at the range, and because they only think they're going to use their gun that little, and they're spending all their time training de-escalation and learning about the community and being a part of it, I'm fine with that.
But I did mention de-escalation.
No, but you
training,
mentioned it for
all
yourself,
encompassed.
though.
No,
But
for police, they need.
Police officers don't learn de-escalation at the firing range.
They should. Well,
They learn to, shoot accurately, hopefully, and kill, inevitably.
There needs to be a balance, 100%. When you defund the police lack in training. That's a problem. Police need to be trained because everything in life is muscle memory. The number one thing you should do is use your mouth, no matter what you do. You go out there, you talk, and that's where the de-escalation comes in. But by no means are police officers going out there in their head and say, I want to use my gun today. No, that's the last thing on their mind. Policing has gone away from enforcement nationally, which it should have, and is more community police-based. And that's where the funding goes to, so we can go and change the outlook of what policing has, unfortunately, looked like it's become.
I just think we also have to realize by the time the phone is calling 911 and
Okay, I had to pause that for a minute because I'm having problems all of a sudden with my headphones. I unplugged them, left the room, I come back, and the headphone jack is not
most shootings is
working. What in the world? Which makes me wonder if my headphones are working, which, hang on, I've got a few different headphone jacks here. Oh, I'm like totally manhandling the fucking... There we go. Okay, I don't know if that's gonna...
It's too late. It's too late.
Oh, that's gonna create an echo. Shit. Great, I unplugged my headphones and all of a sudden it just does not want to work. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly here. Okay. Although, this is weird because now I'm hearing my own voice even more so. There we go. Okay, so let me address some of the things I heard while I was away. The idea that cops aren't just looking for a reason to use their gun. The idea that cops' last tool to use is their gun, right? These were some things that were said. I mean, yes and no. For the most part, there are a lot of cops who think that way, and there are a lot of cops who really take the de-escalation part of their training super fucking seriously. But I personally have encountered a number of police officers who they get off on the adrenaline. They get off on the escalation. And again, this notion that they have tasers, batons, lesser lethal, smoke, tear gas, you name it, ways to try to avoid a firefight. That's not always, I mean, if they feel unsafe, they're going to unbuckle that holster, They're going to have it at the ready, and it's always going to be a crutch. Now, you could say the same thing about other gun owners, Yeah, it may lead to escalation, and I think that's what this guy was saying. This guy on the screen right now was trying to hint at earlier, is that there's always this, confidence when you're carrying a weapon that you may escalate. You know, I think for the average person who's just trying to get by, you know, I think they would be more likely to de-escalate. You know, I don't think there's not the culture built in that there is with law enforcement, right? Gun owner culture isn't necessarily badassery culture. I mean, there's an element to it, but you find that more in the hunting kind of community. Like, oh yeah, check out my badass hunting rifle with the scope and the, you know, my deer stand and all this gear I've got. And there are definitely some survivalist types who kind of take that mentality and take culture to the next level. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of poisonous fucking people in all these communities. So I'm not necessarily trying to single out law enforcement, but it seems to be just the damn blue striped flag fucks me up, man. Just how much it has become an ingrained culture of superiority. It just fucks me up. So again, the idea that there aren't a certain number of people who do this for those nefarious reasons, if you're a good cop out there, please don't mix my words. You know, we need more like you. We need more cops who give a shit about their oath, who give a shit about de-escalation, who give a shit about the mental health of the people they encounter every day, and aren't just looking to stomp heads. What? Okay, so I'm assuming this is the same story you were hinting at before, where if you had had a gun, like, I don't know who shot you, bro. I don't know who shot you, but if somebody had a gun, they might have been able to stop that guy before he shot you. And like you said, if you had waited for the police to arrive, shit would have gotten worse. I don't know what the solution is, but you know, the idea that less guns would have solved the problem of some random person shooting you, and you know, you're acknowledging that waiting for police isn't the answer. So I don't know what the answer is. And we're later in this, we're going to get into, well, what is the answer when someone's shooting at you? And some of it's kind of fucked up. So, again, we get into this idea that, okay, it's a few bad apples. But we forget that the saying goes, like the whole saying is that a few bad apples spoil the bunch. You call yourselves law enforcement. So if you see, bro, even your own brother, your mother, your sister, you see them fucking breaking a very serious law, like murder, you can't close ranks. You can't close ranks. There are some things, your oath, right? Your oath to serve and defend, protect, and serve. Like, your role in society has to be bigger than your ego. It has to be bigger than your bonds. It has to be bigger than your emotions and your ties. And if you don't have the guts to make it bigger, if you don't have the guts to do the right thing, then you picked the wrong career, period.
Now, a lot of the conversation around guns is driven by mass shootings, particularly school shootings. What is the solution to mass shootings in schools?
And here we go. We went from law enforcement, and we never really, I don't know how long. I mean, again, this is Vice editing this, so I don't know how long they went on and on about the law enforcement debate, but we get it cut short when people just started talking about actual solutions to the problem. Well, now let's just cut it short because we don't want to offend anybody. Let's just cut that short and move on to the next segment of the debate in school shootings.
Protection for our children, not creating a prison environment. We need to make sure that they understand that the police are their friends and they're there to protect them. Education is what's going to empower everybody, so we need to educate them on all levels, not just firearms, not just school security, but how to take care of themselves and each other.
I was one of those kids who was trained that way and raised that way, not to be super dramatic about it, but things took a turn for me, and I could have been one of the kids on the other side of that gun.
Wait, what? What? Fucking what? Like, okay, so first off, she's like, okay, we need kids to learn how to interact with society in this sort of de-escalated but aware form, which, okay, I could get on board with that. But then this person chimes in and says, I got that kind of training, but I could have been on that other side of the coin? Are you insinuating that you were crazy enough to become a mass shooter but somehow didn't? Let's find out. Yep.
Secretive as a result of this. You hide from the people who know you the most. There's a protectiveness around these issues that is very difficult to penetrate because it is so bound up in our sense of safety and our sense of family, and it's very difficult to address these because what makes one person safe does not necessarily make someone else feel safe.
I think that
Bullshit. I mean, look. You have introverts, you have extroverts, right? But let's be honest. The most loner still needs a loved one, a confidant. And someone with 50 friends needs at least one really close confidant who means more to them than the big picture, right? So I get what he's saying. Everyone's different. Everyone has different needs. Everyone has different personality types, and we interact with society in different ways. But we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about education, right? We're talking about finding a way to combine the two in a safe way, in a safe environment, in a group setting. And while you may have been a loner person, I don't want to assume gender, while you person may have been a loner and may have had different social needs, having an outlet, having a good friend, having someone who is mentally stable to talk to. I don't know if you had that, but chances are, like, that's the one thing that could save you from going down those dark paths.
mental health is important. Like what sometimes we're not going to replace it, but that's something that we need to empower them because without mental health, without good mental health, you can't make any decisions about anything else in a healthy, productive manner. So we need to start empowering our children's minds and taking care of their mental health first and foremost.
I am living proof of the fact that the problem does exist and it does.
I mean, I'm basically pausing it so that I'm not just letting the video ramble on. But yeah, if you're part of the problem, then your ability to admit you're part of the problem is part of the solution. Flat out. Like, if you're able to just say, yeah, I'm part of the problem, I had dark thoughts, instead of letting the dark thoughts take over and you doing something drastic. I mean, to me, what she's saying, the mental health, getting young people to admit, hey, I'm not fucking right. I'm thinking about things that kids shouldn't be thinking about. Like, being able to just have that conversation with another person goes a long fucking way.
And I was able to come back from a place that other people might not be able to come back from. And I'm not saying it's a danger for everyone, but I'm saying, like, we can't reach everybody that way. Every community is different. Every community has needs.
You have to try. Bullshit. You have to try. Oh my God. Like what? Banning guns? That's not going to solve the problem of fucking suicidal teens wanting to take out what they see as a poisonous society that hates them. No, you're wrong. You're fucking wrong. And probably then use that as a reason to alienate the kids with long hair and, you know, goth fucking clothing or whatever, you know. Again, you used it as a reason to alienate people. And that's one risk we have with this kind of stuff, is you might make the weird kid even weirder. And that's where we disagree, sir. I think part of the problem, when I was 10 years old, I was taken out by my stepfather at the time and taught how to shoot a .22 rifle at beer cans on the riverbank. And I learned a certain respect for a deadly weapon. I didn't necessarily, you know, I'm not one who enjoys shooting guns, but I enjoy learning a skill. I enjoy learning respect. I enjoy analyzing the rules and what they mean and why they're there. So, you know, again, I didn't feel powerful holding a deadly weapon, just as I don't feel powerful now holding a deadly weapon when I go to the range. I don't feel empowered like some people do. I don't feel confident like some people do. I feel this is a tool. I need to know how to use a tool. Just like when I use a chainsaw. I know that there have been a lot of chainsaw accidents where people have gotten fucking seriously injured or died. But I use a chainsaw. I use it smart. I use it with protective equipment. And I know how to do the things I need to do with my tool. I also know I know personally some young urban kids who have gotten in some serious trouble for hurting people with firearms. When they were growing up, they didn't go through safety training classes. They weren't taught things like trigger discipline and flagging. They weren't taught how to properly assemble, disassemble, and care for a semi-automatic pistol. they weren't taught to respect the tool they were holding. And they got in some serious trouble. So this guy's idea that we don't need more guns to solve the problem, I think, no, we don't need more guns. But to go back to what we were talking about earlier, we need safety training, we need respect. There was a time in our country where kids were taught how to shoot a rifle in middle school. Kids were taught safety of a firearm in middle school. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where guns are like drugs. You know, we've made it the no-no, the naughty. You know, the thing a kid will go to when he rebels. Instead of the boring tool nobody wants to play with.
I think it's really to invest in our kids.
Continuously working on ourselves and seeking for the things that we need. I think things will get better in the long run, but some people have, the pride's a little high, and I think that's just something that we need to bring down and again normalize.
The money's a little low, and the access to healthcare is a little low too.
But it's also improving. I've seen different options for kids, and there are counselors in school. There's anonymous things online. So as it wasn't a topic conversation before, it definitely is now, and it might be moving slow, but it definitely is moving in that direction.
Not in my neighborhood, though.
Okay, I'm going to let this guy finish his point. I'm going to counter whatever the fucking point he has, because she's right. There are resources if you look for them. And what this guy's about to say about his neighborhood, part of the problem is people in his neighborhood aren't looking for those kind of resources. The kind of people in his neighborhood who are going to the gun, so to speak, are doing so because they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to seek help. Again, like she said, there's a pride involved. And that pride involves standing up for your own, popping a cap in a motherfucker if you have to.
And I tell you what's happening right now in our neighborhoods. You're traumatized. Here's a gun. Deal with it. Now,
That's what I just said.
not the way. Don't get me wrong. And that's what I'm really struggling with. But in my neighborhood, people are dying. We're dying.
Yeah, but that doesn't address her point that the fucking resources were there. Like, if your boy wasn't handing you the gun saying, oh, you're traumatized, here's a gun, deal with it. If instead your boy, your friend was being a friend and saying, hey, here's an outlet on the internet you could talk about those problems. Or, hey, talk to me about those problems. Yeah, that's pretty fucked up, but violence, you're going to escalate this and you're going to bring people's family into it and it's going to be way fucked up. Those aren't real friends. And again, that goes back to the fucking pride she was talking about. That's not about the resources.
So we can't just sit here and say, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Oh, we can. Oh, we definitely fucking can. Yeah, because your bootstraps have nothing to do with the pride that you just fucking talked about when you said, hey, you got a trauma, here's a gun, go solve it. That's a pride issue. That's not a problem with resources. It's not a problem with bootstraps. Everything else, if you have people who give a shit and are empathetic about you, they're not going to hand you a gun and tell you to solve your own fucking problem. Flat out. And if you think that's a problem with your neighborhood, then you are part of the problem with your neighborhood. Because instead, you could be the one going to these young boys and say, hey, look, if you got beef with someone, you come to me and you talk to me. And you be the de-escalation factor in your neighborhood. But instead, you seem to be the one to turn a blind eye and say, oh, we need government to do it for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been going for well over an hour and a half, and we're about halfway through this video. You know what? I'm going to keep going a little bit more. We'll go to 2 hours. We'll try to make it 2/3 of the way through this video, and we'll see where we're going from there and try to make the next one. We'll have to do this in 2 parts.
Thing that came up earlier was universal background checks. I'm curious, does everyone here support universal background checks on all gun
I have to go to a store and pay for them to do the background check. I don't see how that's the problem he's saying it is. I don't see how that's the barrier he's saying it is. If you're selling a firearm to someone, just include that cost. If you want to be this responsible gun seller, right? I mean, because it's part of the law. It's part of the ATF code that, yeah, you're not supposed to sell to someone you think might commit a crime with that weapon. Or to someone you think might be disbarred from owning that weapon. So, I mean, you do have that responsibility as a seller. This idea that people just go into fucking gun shows and just start selling off their back. I mean, there is that, but there's more to that. You know, there's more law to that. And you would be frankly stupid to just walk up to a random person and exchange cash for a gun and let them walk away with a gun that was previously registered to you or your dealership. You would be one of the stupidest people on the planet if you engaged in that activity. That's all I'm saying.
Universal background checks, in theory, sounds great. Well, I am a domestic violence survivor, right? Say I have to go to this medical professional, this mental health person, and I have to explain to her why I want this firearm. Based on her own biases about me as a black woman, Army veteran, survivor of domestic violence, she may say, because of those things, I should not be allowed to own and use a firearm for my own self-defense. Decide who gets to have the firearm based off of their mental health background and who doesn't.
The background check system does save lives, and I think there are tragedies that could have been avoided.
Again, I don't know if this is Vice cutting. She just said the smartest thing that anyone on this panel has said all night. And this guy is just gonna fucking red herring it off into the fucking distance and start saying something else. Now, I don't know if this is Vice's editing job or if this is this dude being an asshole. But the fact that nobody fucking addressed what she just said, somebody has really fucking dropped the ball here, whether it's Vice's editing team or whether it's this fucking asshole changing the subject. I can't believe this.
Charleston, for example, a young man applied for the background check after the deadline. They said, okay, well, we haven't seen any flags yet. Go ahead and purchase a firearm. And he went to a church and slaughtered black folks. And I do think that there's real questions about bias and how these systems are applied and what the different flags look like. And I really think we have to get more focused on what is the goal here. Is the goal to preserve some perceived right, or is the goal to save lives?
The goal is to preserve a perceived right. Flat out. I don't care if you and your whole fucking family die. It's not a perceived right. It's a fucking human right. Period. You can bang the drum and the emotional, oh, it's about the lives. Won't someone think of the lives and the children and the... No, fuck you. I want to see lives protected also. This idea that law-abiding people arming themselves have to put themselves on lists and go through background checks and jump through every fucking hoop you want to fucking make them jump through because you're nervous that people are dying. Because you're nervous that people are getting illegal guns. And I could go off onto this whole tangent about the Obama administration and Fast and Furious and how illegal guns wound up in Mexico and wound up back in the hands of drug dealers here in the United States. Those weren't law-abiding gun owners selling those guns. Those weren't law-abiding gun manufacturers and gun dealers selling those guns. This idea that if we make it harder and harder and harder for law-abiding citizens to go about their daily business, that somehow it's going to be harder for the criminal to, is a fucking misnomer. And this idea that you want to keep crying about lives when the things you're advocating don't save lives. They do to some degree, but at the cost of human rights and lives in the other direction. How many people do you think have been in situations where they should have been able to defend themselves, but the government took away their right to own a self-defense apparatus? It's more than you might think.
So let's say somebody does this universal background check, and then there's an existing gun registry, and they register on it, and they've cleared all of these things, but then they still go out and commit a murder. There's no room with little green lights that says because this person registered on all counts, we're keeping track of them, and all of a sudden the green light has gone off, and yes, we know this person's about to commit a murder. So again, speaking of prevention, what is that preventing?
We do that with automobiles, right? If you get how many drunk driving incidents or
Did this motherfucker just compare mass shootings to drunk driving? The people who commit mass shootings don't typically commit more than one. I mean, if I'm wrong, most of those people either die or go to prison. So, yeah. And you want to talk about people in your neighborhood. Well, if people commit a violent crime or a felony and a weapon is involved, that's supposed to be a sentence enhancement. Those people are supposed to go to prison. I don't know where this guy's going with this.
speeding tickets, at some point your license gets revoked because they're like, hey, we don't entrust you with this car anymore because you could harm someone else or yourself.
Okay, but again, how are you going to own a gun if you're in prison? He's talking about repeat offenses. If you have repeat offenses with a gun, you're a felon and you're not allowed to own a gun. So what does this have to do with background checks? What does this have to do with jumping through hoops to buy the first gun? This guy's fucking retarded.
But that is the thing, though, with firearms. When you have a weapons carry license and you commit a crime, they revoke your weapons carry license. But we're talking about if they haven't committed a crime yet, we can't predict. There's no way for us to know what's going to happen in the future.
But right now, our background check system has loopholes where even after you commit a crime, you still can keep your firearm or purchase your firearm.
So
I see what you're
illegally,
saying.
Wait, what?
right? Illegally. So no.
Well, if the loophole is that I'm going to go to the drug dealer down the street and buy a fucking AR-15 out of the trunk of his car or buy a MAC-10 out of the trunk of his car, that's not a loophole in the system. That's avoiding the system that law-abiding people are being asked to follow. What the fuck is this dude smoking?
Law or policy, there is no way to legally purchase a firearm.
Boyfriend loophole is a perfect one.
So that's illegal. I do this every day on the 4473. It's the ATF form you fill out to legally purchase a firearm. Are you the actual transferee or buyer of this firearm? So if I am a girlfriend and I'm buying a gun for my boyfriend, that is already a federal crime.
Exactly. And let's say you did it. If he commits a crime with that weapon, that's his crime. And he was illegally possessing the weapon. The idea, I could do that with a background check. I could do that with a background check. Say I'm not a girlfriend. Say I'm just the guy living next door. Are you going to deny me a gun sale because my neighbor is a felon and I could give him the gun? How many of these loopholes do you want to go down the fucking rabbit hole before people just have a constitutional right to own a fucking weapon?
It's already illegal.
Something that forbids you from getting a firearm, but if you assault your girlfriend, even if you're convicted of that, it doesn't necessarily go on.
No, this guy's misspeaking. It depends on if it's a felony. Felons can't own guns. And yes, there are different levels for different states about a domestic violence charge. Most of those have already been taken care of. There are a few states that allow it county by county. This isn't a problem. This seriously isn't a problem.
The record in a way that prevents you from getting a gun. We're not going to eliminate every person who wants to commit a
And let me address another problem with this theory. Women get away and get light sentences for domestic violence issues all the time in this country. And while definitely women aren't necessarily your go-to for a mass shooting, right? They're not the demographic that does a lot of mass shootings, but the law is supposed to be applied evenly. So again, if this is a loophole for men, then it's a loophole for women, and those women who may have something seriously wrong with them can still go buy a gun. So again, you call it the girlfriend-wife loophole. Well, it's also a husband loophole. It's also a problem the other way around. And again, I'm not necessarily interested in getting a gendered debate. It should be everyone has the right to own a gun until they've done something sufficient enough to remove that right. Period. No, the goal is not to bring numbers down. The goal is to recognize when a threat occurs and do what is necessary. Period. If we can't have a department of pre-crime. We can't take away people's rights when they haven't done anything because we're afraid they might one day. But we can put systems together where, look, you committed a violent felony, you don't get to own a gun.
now where things are crushing. So I kind of feel like some of these possibilities, there's always going to be drawbacks to things that we try and do. I question whether they are worse than the amount of boyfriends who kill their wives.
I want to bring it back to the gun question because you're talking about mental health, and there are specific laws that deal with this. Red flag laws. If someone has a mental health crisis, those laws exist to try to take the gun away from that person before they commit a crime. How do we feel about that?
I'm pretty pro red flag laws. I understand that these.
It depends on the mental health condition to me, but I'm pretty fucking against red flag laws. Because quite frankly, let's get one thing straight is we rely on this profession of mental health to get everything right. And if anything in the past 3 decades has taught us that the mental health industry doesn't always get everything right. And when we're talking about taking them at their word to remove the rights of certain people in our society, I think that's a dangerous ask. But anyway, let's see what this guy has to say.
Laws should be implemented very carefully. There's a lot that goes into the rules portion of passing these bills that should be very well thought out. But I think the overarching question.
But isn't that the problem with government in general, is that these fucking politicians never know what the fuck they're doing, and they don't realize the collateral damage of the laws they pass. I mean, you make it illegal to sell single cigarettes in New York City, and then a man gets choked to death by a police officer. Because, quite frankly, when you pass that law, you don't think that the consequences might wind up with law enforcement taking someone's life. So again, when you make laws, you don't really think about the collateral damage. This guy talking about, well, you got to be very careful how you construct these laws. Politicians aren't ever careful, and they never go the way you intend them to go.
Needs to become
people should have guns in certain situations. I think most people would agree, there are certain people who should not have guns. But I think the question is more so, will the United States of America truly take away guns from
And those people she's talking about that we could all agree shouldn't have guns. Let me tell you, if they are committed enough to getting a gun, there's not a whole lot that's going to be able to stop them. They might find themselves in contact with the right federal agent at the right time who might misdirect them and entrap them into giving themselves up with their bad motives and be able to arrest them. But let's be honest, most of those people will find somebody with a trunk full of guns and buy an illegal weapon.
those that need to have their guns taken away? And I think the answer to that question is no. The United States of America has very easily labeled people criminal that they should not be labeling criminal. And they're more concerned about profiting off of that label than they are actually preventing violence. And so
That's true too.
should red flag laws exist? The question is more so, will the United States of America actually enforce the law the way it needs to be enforced? And no, the United States will not.
I'm curious, who are the people who you think shouldn't have guns? You say there are certain people. What do you have in mind?
Well, I certainly think plenty of right-wing ideologues should not have guns. I think
Okay, now she lost me. I was right with her on those last 2 points, but now she lost me. And, this idea that we're labeling people as criminal who shouldn't be criminal. I definitely have a problem with everything in the book being called a felony, especially certain drug possession, like not even with intent to sell, but certain possession is being looked at as felony and therefore a reason to take away your right to own a weapon. I think you have to be, again, we can't have a division of pre-crime. I think you have to have committed a violent felony. Now, again, our government wants to make more and more things felonies and increase the punishment of more and more things and make more and more laws, and you got felony tax evasion and all these non-violent crimes that are being folded in to all this bullshit. But if you committed a violent felony or committed a felony with a firearm, that should prevent you from, you should be banned from owning a firearm after that. Now, is it going to stop you? If you're a criminal, is that going to stop you from going and getting an illegal firearm? Probably not. But the question is, where do we put the laws? And that's where I think we put the laws.
plenty of violently anti-trans people should not have guns. I think misogynists should not have guns. I think violent racists should not have guns. I think those who have
Okay, wait a minute. Violent anti-trans and violent racists. I mean, you got to prove that they're violent, right? You got to find me an instance where they have provoked violence, take them to court, convict them of a felony, then they don't have guns. Problem solved. This right-wing ideologues prove that they've committed violence and then take their guns. Otherwise, they're just law-abiding citizens who I may ideologically disagree with.
an incredible number to most in society that do not look like them should not have access to guns.
With all this legislation, the question is, who do we have drawing it up? The people who never owned a gun, or the people that have owned guns? What's the right answer? I don't have that. I think everyone should have a right to carry a gun, but we've touched on it. If you're a violent person, you shouldn't have it. Domestic violence history, shouldn't have it. Drug trafficking, sex trafficking, because a lot of times in the law enforcement world, when you have a lot of drugs, you end up having a couple guns. If you're sex trafficking, there's someone probably with a gun.
How are we going to make sure bias isn't?
I mean, I can't disagree with what the guy just said. I mean, yeah, I disagree with him on some of the law enforcement stuff, but yeah, if you've been convicted of those things, That's the problem, is a lot of these people aren't talking about the difference between a proclivity for and an actual conviction on your record that shows you have been convicted of a felony, which is already what the law is. Why do we need red flag laws if we already have proof that these people are violent and have committed felonies and therefore are felons who shouldn't be owning firearms? We don't need another law. The law already exists. You can't ban them any further for those people.
Playing a part in people who are enforcing laws. There are some elitist people in this country who feel like, well, only we should be protected by firearms. The onus should not be on our government. I think as a society, as an adult in this country, there should be some responsibility in knowing yourself and being able to identify when you are okay, when you're not okay. So I think we need to figure out a way to give the people the tools they need to identify themselves. Hey, I'm not okay. Hey, I don't need to have my firearms right now. Hey, I probably am going to hurt myself or someone else, and then provide the resources to do that.
I mean, that sounds great in theory.
I don't need my firearms right now. I think the question is, well, then who do you give them to? If you can't be trusted with them, who do you give them to? Who can you trust to hold on to your firearms until you're mentally healthy again? Do you turn them into a police government buyback where they're going to melt them down and then you have to fight to get your rights back? Because now you're on a government list where you have admitted that you can't be trusted with a firearm? Or do we create nonprofits who will hold on or who may utilize a background check type system and do some sales? You know, you can sell them through an honorable channel. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, lady, but you know, if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust? Really?
Reality, though, that's not going to happen every time. And I'm curious what you think is the threshold where somebody say,
Okay, fucker. Yeah, it's not going to happen every time, but when is anything in life 100% universally good, right? This idea that all of a sudden we should have zero gun deaths. Zero gun deaths are acceptable. When people die of traffic accidents, people die of drunk driving, people die of drug overdoses, alcohol poisoning, excuse me. All of these other deaths, lung cancer from smoking, all of these other deaths, acceptable within a certain level of freedom. But we should have zero gun deaths because guns are icky. I'm not saying I want people to die. Be very fucking clear here. I'm not saying I want people to die. I don't. And zero gun deaths would be ideal. But this idea that we've got to have this perfect fucking utopia where nothing bad ever happens. This is one of the only areas of society where that seems to be the only, like, we draw the line at zero.
you can't have a gun anymore.
I don't think that decision should be on one person or just an attorney or just a judge or just a mental health professional, because I've seen in a lot of these red flag instances, these people never get their firearms back. Well, if my mental health is declined this day or this month is tough for me, but then I go to therapy or I fix myself and I'm better months from now, I should have my rights restored. You can't keep them forever, right? I think there should be a process for that as well.
I think those protections and checks and balances are just critical because right now America criminalizes black men. There's no doubt about it. I've been through it. I've never been caught for some type of violence offense, but I've had guns drawn on me by law enforcement 5 times, right? When I was shot, when I arrived at the hospital, I wasn't met with a nurse or a doctor or a surgeon. I was met with 3 investigators, and they asked me, where's my gun? And in my situation, they were more focused on solving the crime and saving.
Where was your gun? Where was your gun? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I mean, look, you're speaking, you're preaching to the choir here, but yet you're advocating for the opposite solution. If you're assumed to have rights, then you should just have those rights. And if the problem is that law enforcement looks at the people as evil and bad and Like that's a problem we need to fix with law enforcement, not just assume everyone's bad, not just black men, right? We need black men to be seen as good and positive. We need to make their community better, not just have law enforcement assume everyone with a gun is a bad guy.
So there's a lot of times that there's a red flag law that's called, and there's uniformed police officers who go to remove a firearm from the situation, who might have biases, who might have racial ideologies in their head, and I think that's a lot of confrontation. I feel like there's a lack of training. The police officers that go to serve these red flag laws, there needs to be a lot of checks and balances, and there needs to be a lot of accountability in how these things are executed.
When we talk about regulation and law,
I mean, we're going round and round about the same problem here with law enforcement and with. But again, earlier I spoke the problem. Part of the problem is with the politician. Part of the problem is the way these laws are written. You're relying on mental health professionals or one judge, or you're relying on the testimony of one biased person to say, yeah, this person is so violent that, yeah, they can't own guns now. And then you just issue the order. Law enforcement goes in thinking this person is unhinged, which is already a fucking problem. Because once you tell law enforcement someone's unhinged, their adrenaline's pumping. They're fucking hyped. There is way too much escalation from the fucking get-go. And now you're knocking on their door saying, yeah, you need to give up your rights. Ooh. And you haven't done anything wrong? You haven't committed a felony? Yeah, I don't like where any of this is going. Again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. The current law is if you've committed a violent felony, you're a felon. You can't own a gun.
people need to understand, like, especially on the left, you're going to take the firearms away from the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters and the white militiamen. It really, they're not. Those people don't have any interactions with the police normally, right? You pass these laws, you're going after black men, you're going after brown men, you're going after poor people.
At the end of the day, that there's systemic racism, and then it leads to black and brown people being criminalized. And I'm curious, when it comes to passing more gun laws, how do you think we could avoid that?
Systemic racism. You really look, bro. You really just took what that guy said. That you got militia guys, right, out in the woods in Montana, who rarely come in contact with law enforcement, versus the inner city youth who may come in contact with law enforcement more often. And you're calling that systemic white supremacism, systemic racism. That those who may be in contact with law enforcement more might be affected. That's just rural versus urban. That has nothing to do. I mean, there's a racial component, right? But that's just a fact of the life of living in an urban environment versus a rural environment. A bunch of guys in the fucking woods, they're not trying to attract police attention. Whereas the violence in the inner city happens, anyway, even though there's police attention. It's a different fact of life. You call it systemic racism. Are you trying to say that we should stop policing the inner city and send like teams of cops out to roam the woods and patrol where literally nothing's happening because nobody's trying to attract any attention? Because you think those people are more violent because of what people like Vice Media tell you.
Think about what is the goal. Are we trying to save lives or solve crimes? And if we're trying to save lives, then we can't just keep putting it on the backs of the criminal legal system. We can't incarcerate.
Okay, motherfucker. Here you did it again. Are we trying to do A or B? Well, wait a minute. Are we trying to save lives or solve crimes? Well, that depends. Is taking a life supposed to be a crime? Is taking a life supposed to be a fucking crime? How about we prevent crime? How about we prevent the crime of taking life? Where is this assumption that it's one or the other? It's the same fucking thing. Anyway, it looks as though we're 2/3 of the way through. I think I'm going to try to power through this. So,
If that was the case, Louisiana would be the safest city in the country. But it's not. It's one of the most deadliest. So you have the highest level of incarceration and the highest level of gun violence in one state. This is something where we have to think about legislation and laws that provide more resources for the communities that are most vulnerable and at risk to violence.
I'm curious to talk to folks and see, do you support restrictions on...
well, I mean, if you were to ask me, I would say that's because certain police departments act as just yet another street gang. And again, nothing against the good cops out there, but either they're getting involved in the turf wars or they're not. And quite frankly, this is where you find yourself.
specific types of guns like the AR-15, for example? If so, why or why not?
You know why the AR-15 is popular? Is because it's affordable. You can customize it to whatever you need to do, whether it's self-defense, hunting, target shooting.
I think what you just said, though, is part of the problem, too, because the AR-15 is really like it has a marketing appeal. And America does marketing really well. And people respond very well to marketing, especially if you're selling them something they already want. So it's very convenient. The pedestal kind of grew up under it. But now it's there, it's very hard to take that back.
I mean, he's not wrong, but he says it like it's a bad thing. Like, yes, it's an easy to use, easy to customize tool. I mean, look, there are commercials for toilet paper, people. Why do I need to see a commercial with a bear wiping his ass? I already know that I'm going to need to go to the store and buy a product to wipe my ass. Marketing is just fucking marketing. It doesn't matter whether you need the tool or not, you're gonna get marketing. And yes, AR-15 is a popular platform because it's easy to use and customize.
I can someone else with an AR-15. No, the thing is, as a responsible gun owner, I personally...
Yeah, who is this guy? I mean, look at him laughing. What are you going to defend yourself with an AR-15? Ask Kyle Rittenhouse. 3 times in one night, he had to defend his life against someone with his AR-15.
who own several rifles, our president's protective rifles, AR-15 style rifles. Our law enforcement officers use, carry, and have AR-15 caliber rifles. So if I'm defending myself against, a lot of the two and people say my government, I have to have equal or greater access to the tools that they have as well. Is the president's life more important than mine? If you don't like them, that's great. Don't buy them.
That's not how it works, though. You
You notice he glossed over is the president's life more important than mine? Because he doesn't want to admit that he thinks yes. He probably thinks yes. There are certain government officials whose lives are more important than mine or yours. He can feel that way, but we'll see what he says here.
don't need to get hit with one bullet to die. Just because someone has an AR doesn't mean I got one. We're equal on the same playing field.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Okay, you only need one bullet to die. Or have a crane dropped on your head. Or get hit by a car. An AR-15 is not going to protect me if I'm standing in the street and a fucking metro bus flies and smacks into me and fucking turns me into pudding. That's not the point. I mean, look, a butter knife doesn't cut through toasted bread very well. But it's better to have a butter knife than a spoon. It'd be nice if you had a bread knife. But if you don't have anything and you got to tear the shit with your hands, that's not ideal either. The idea that the weapon's not perfect, it can't just, it doesn't sprout a shield and protect me from all gunfire. Doesn't mean it's not a fucking tool that's pretty handy in those type of instances where, yeah, maybe I'd rather have a shield, but you know what? My AR-15 is better than going in here with no shield, no gun, right? This guy strawmans himself. Zombies. Bullshit.
No, they asked the police chief of Buffalo after the shooting, if you were armed with those types of weapons, would you have been a better responder? He said no. He said the only reason the slaughter stopped is because the shooter stopped, not because they had the right tool.
By security who had a handgun, who took a shot at the chest, and there are armor-piercing rounds, there are types of ammunition for AR-15s that would have ended that threat that moment. But unfortunately, because he had just a handgun, the shooter was forced to slow down, stop, gather himself, but then he continued to take other people's lives.
What you're describing in a way sounds like an arms race where...
Yeah, it's an arms race. But anyway, look, this idea that there's no perfect tool for every job, so therefore, like, your tool's not right. This just fascinates me. It fascinates me that this is all the debates about gun rights and you see, I'm a person, I'm a philosopher, right? So I get to the root. The root is again, back to what I said at the very beginning of this video, that the root of this whole debate is, fuck you, I have a right. Fuck you, it's my human right. Fuck you. There's no other debate needed. But the fact that we have now gone so far from the philosophical down to the nitty gritty of, well, your tool's not perfect. You know what? I've taken out screws with a butter knife. Phillips head screws. I've taken Phillips head screws out with a butter knife. I don't need to be told that my tool's not effective. It's more effective than not having a tool. It's that simple.
If someone else has an AR-15, therefore I need it. The end game is that everyone has an AR.
No, the end game. Okay, so yes, to some degree he's right. There's an arms race, but it's only because, yes, you should be able to defend yourself against any threat that's out there. And if the other threats out there are carrying the same type of firearm, then yeah, maybe I want a shotgun for home defense, or maybe I want a rifle for long range defense, or maybe I want a handgun for, kind of more close range stuff. The idea is that we have a diversity of solutions for any given problem.
The AR-15's been around for, 40, 50, I think it's almost 60 years old now to civilians. Like, Greg has shot hunting rifles. Pretty much every hunting rifle is more powerful than the AR-15. The AR-15 is the bare minimum that the U.S. government found out to be lethal to a human being. Just because it has 30 rounds doesn't mean you can shoot 30 rounds at a person.
So why the specific feeling towards the AR-15 and not a handgun with a 30-round magazine, which do
I
exist?
have the same sentiments for that.
So you feel equally about both?
Yeah, I think we are in a world where we're creating these weapons that are literally built for mass fatality.
Okay, but again, 30-round magazine. Maybe you got 15 motherfuckers coming at you. I mean, if you're a security guard and all of a sudden you're protecting a building by your fucking self, or maybe there's one other guard on duty. You got a 7-round magazine. And now you got 15 motherfuckers trying to break in. Between you and your partner, you have to hit critical mass on every one of them motherfuckers. And you're still going to be one bullet short.
We're encouraging responsible gun owners to use the firearm to defend themselves. Absolutely. To defend myself, yes. If a single woman who lives at home and 30 intruders come in, God forbid. Okay, two. Say two. Right, intruders come in with my handgun, my semi-automatic handgun, using my firearm to defend myself. A rifle would be better. It would have a better advantage. I have a longer maximum effective range as far as defending my life. I don't have to be at a close distance. There are so many other advantages to using a AR-15 platform rifle for self-defense than people realize.
But the culture that y'all are buying into or encouraging is the same culture that armed the shooter at Tops. It's the same sentiment that armed the shooter.
Okay. I mean, look. What do you want me to say? No? I mean, yes, it does. But as a legal gun owner, that's not my responsibility. As a legal gun owner, as someone who is able to drink alcohol responsibly, is your DUI my fucking problem? Is someone who is able to drive a vehicle responsibly, is your DUI my fucking problem? Oh, my ability to own an SUV encourages your right to drink and drive. No. Fuck you and fuck off with this bullshit argument.
In Atlanta. I mean, it's the same sentiment that, we should have these guns. So what's the difference between that shooter and someone else?
We're good people.
I feel like you're really putting words in our mouth. We haven't told anyone to go out and buy an AR-15.
I want to jump in because I don't think it's necessarily about telling someone to do it. It's about the availability and the access to that weapon.
Which are part of the marketing.
I have a question.
Which are part of the marketing. Okay, what the... Who gives a shit? The availability, yes. Again, going back to my screwdriver, I could kill someone with a fucking nail gun. There's lots of ways to kill people. Again, where is this idea that nobody can ever die of a gunshot?
Question. If we get rid of AR-15s for law-abiding citizens, how do we defend ourselves when those two guys, and don't say that's not probable, because two guys is more probable than 30 guys to kick in your door. How do I defend myself and my children against those two guys who have AR-15s? Tell me how. And you said yourself that the police may not make it there in time. Tell me how I say that.
In a situation like that is get out the house. If you're gonna have a shootout with two people with AR-15.
Oh my God! Get out the house! Okay, so you just saw his face. He sees you dart out. Now all he's got to do is fucking snipe you out the window with his fucking rifle as you're running down the street. Now granted, you're a moving target, so it's going to be rough, but he's a fucking criminal. He don't care if he misses you and hits your fucking car or whatever else is parked on the street. You've made yourself a target. You've exposed instead of bunkering down, hiding where you could get a good shot off, you've now jumped out a window or through a fucking door and exposed yourself to that shooter. This guy has no idea what the fuck he's advocating. No, just run. Just run from the guy with a high-powered rifle.
Your children at home? She just stated that she rounds a piece, that's 90 rounds of bullets firing through the home.
You think I can outrun that?
You need to get out of the house.
Oh, sir, I feel like that. I'm sorry.
You got a better chance of
Yeah, you think I can outrun that? You got a better chance of jumping out what? Ah! He said it! Neighbors? Wait, what? Wait, who said that? Oh, it was the Asian girl.
Aren't we concerned about neighbors?
What about neighbors? What the fuck? is she trying to say that you got a full metal jacket round that's going to go through your wall and kill your neighbor? If you're shooting at the intruder trying to shoot you, you got bullets flying anyway. Your neighbors might get hit anyway from the fucking intruder's bullets. And if you try to run, they're definitely going to shoot. And probably as you're running out the door, they'll shoot through the door across the street or across the hall if you're in an apartment. Like, what? Unless she's insinuating your neighbors are armed and are going to help you in a shootout, I don't know why she's bringing up neighbors. This seems like yet another fucking red herring of yet once again nobody could ever be a victim of gun violence. I mean, we could have heart attacks, we could have DUIs, you know, we could have all these other things in society that cause deaths, but as long as guns exist, they're a problem.
That's what's happening on a daily basis. People are getting their hands on illegal firearms that are disguised or defaced and using them against one another. That's what's happening in the real world. The average person isn't walking around out of their house with an AK-47. From what I've heard.
Well, he went to AK. He see what he did there. He went from AR-15 to AK, and the conversation they were initially having was school shootings and. You know, the whole AR-15 thing started with school shootings, and I could kind of see why that's the focus of the gun grabbing left. But again, we're at this point now where what this police officer or former police officer, whoever this guy is, what he's saying is, yeah, the illegal guns you're seeing on the street harming communities, killing people, they're not the AR-15s, they're not the AK-47s. These are Glocks that are modified. These are you know, with trigger switches and things like that. These are, like you said, expanded magazines. So again, you're going after the tools of the legal gun over because of A, what the school shooters do, and B, because of what the violent criminals do. And statistics show that the bigger problem are these illegally modified weapons. Get rid of fucking gun-free zones. Mass shootings happen in fucking gun-free zones, period.
Like, actually, the emphasis has not so much been put on mental health, as actually community. I feel like that's what I've really been hearing from, you know, even with the recent disagreements. Like, I've heard everyone here talk about community. We've had so many...
Yeah. Going back to what I said earlier, we had a society where kids in junior high were taken out, taught how to shoot, taught how to respect a weapon. Kids are smart enough to learn respect and learn deadliness. You know, the idea that, again, a kid could take your fucking kitchen knife, your butcher knife out of your fucking kitchen and go stab his friend, right? Your teenager could do that. But there's a certain age in which you teach your kid, yeah, it's okay to cut up a piece of chicken or cut up a piece of steak or a you know, slice a brisket, right? There's a certain age you teach your kid how to safely handle a knife where he's not going to chop off his own finger. And you teach him to respect how sharp how sharp and dangerous that tool is and why you have to handle it a certain way and why you have to respect it a certain way and why you have to, you know, use a cutting board so you're not cutting into other things and so it don't slip and cut you or drop on your foot. You know, if we're able to do this with every other tool in society, all we're doing is making gun the naughty thing like we do with drugs. To where when kids want to rebel, this is what they go for.
different ideas in this panel on how we can fix these things, and so
in your life experience, like, I really just want to say it in case no one else says it to you, that I think that you have value in your community without your guns. Like, everything that you've talked about and everything that you've presented, and the skill and the intelligence and the...
Okay, so fucking what? I mean, yes, I'm sitting here providing commentary. You know, I do this channel. I don't do this live stream with a gun. I'm not fucking packing at my desk. I'm interacting with what I view as a community with my voice, because I believe my voice has value too. Because the First Amendment is just as important as the Second. No one said that people aren't valuable without their guns. This is yet another straw man red herring that has nothing to do with the debate that's going on.
desire to help people and to train people and to educate people, I honestly think that...
And you know what, cops? This goes out to any police officer who may be watching. You have value to your community without your gun as well. Without using force, without escalating crazy situations. You can de-escalate crazy situations, and you can kid and have fun with your community. You know, there used to be at a time in my city where local cops would hand out baseball cards to the neighborhood kids, and they kind of earned some respect by interacting frequently with youngsters. They kind of stopped doing that. But, you know, it is what it is. Us versus them mentality. And that's kind of the problem here. Viewing, for someone who's anti-gun, viewing a gun owner as a them. You know, maybe you could have some value to your community by not prejudging people who own guns.
That has nothing to do with your guns.
And my staunch view is more education and training. And then also, we know that we are, and thank you for saying that, valuable with or without our firearms. Whether I'm in New York, whether I'm in a country where I can't have a firearm, it's me. I am the tool. I'm the weapon. So it's me and everything I know. So the firearm's just an extension of who I am.
Oh, she got him cold with the, it's not the gun, it's the fucking person behind the trigger. And that's the important thing to remember through this whole thing, is if you're a criminal, you're a criminal. If you're not, you're not. It's just a tool of the person who's using it.
So I appreciate you saying that. And I think no one on this panel has said more guns is the solution. I don't think anyone has ever said that.
I'll say it. More guns is the solution. More guns, but more education and respect for those guns. You know, again, over the past few days, I've watched some crazy videos of, you know, people doing weird shit with guns, and again, people not having trigger discipline, people flagging their you know, friendly flagging. People with just not taught basic firearm safety. Basic firearm safety. Day one, literally the 5 rules that I've vomited out on my channel several times when bringing up guns. Several people right now are walking around with guns who just, they have no idea what the 5 basic safety rules are. So yeah, more guns is the answer, but more guns with more respect and more education.
This entire time we've been talking, I want to bounce off of that and say, okay, if more guns, not the solution, is less guns the solution?
No, certainly not. And I think, you know, a huge part of this that we have to, you know, consider is, in fact, the economic considerations. The solution is, in fact, to hold the gun industry accountable for their marketing of violence. And so we can't continue.
Marketing of violence. I can't remember the last commercial I saw where they were touting how you could, you know, tear holes through children and dogs and...
We need to point fingers at the individuals who wish to have such self-determination and self-defense. We need to begin pointing fingers at systems and economic industries that have been set.
How about the movie industry? How about Hollywood? Can we point that finger at Hollywood? Hollywood sells more guns Hollywood and really, not to get too political, but Democrat politicians who excuse things like rioting sell more guns than Smith and Wesson ever had. Like, I've never seen a Smith and Wesson advertisement. Like, I've seen a Walther advertisement on Louder with Crowder, but again, it's never been like tear holes through your enemies with Walter. No. The gun ads I've seen have been few and far between, and they're all about safety and self-defense.
So responsible for producing violence and producing.
Again, it's Hollywood. It's the music industry. Plow, plow, plow. Where do you hear things like, busting a cap in people's asses? You see it in TV shows and movies and music. It's the entertainment industry, not the gun industry, that sells guns.
Massive amounts of weapons.
I imagine that the gun industry was making billions of dollars off of firearms, was pouring billions of dollars into the communities that are suffering from gun violence. Like, how would that transform our entire culture? But right now, we are living in a world where
well, here's the other thing about that is, again, you want to blame the gun industry. Well, chances are those sales in problem communities, that money's not going to the gun industry. That money's going to probably as the police officer said earlier, the drug and sex trafficking industries.
billion-dollar industry is selling that more guns equals more safety narrative, and we're buying into it without pushing back and saying, actually, what we need is more resources for those that have been traumatized.
I wouldn't say that we're buying into it. I think we're simply recognizing the reality that there's a violent world out there and that we need to, in fact, protect ourselves. And we can't simply skip over the fact that the world is violent to live in a utopia.
But the best way to protect ourselves is to prevent violence.
And that's true, it is to prevent violence, but it's also about self-determination and self-defense as well. And we have to understand that there are, in fact, mechanisms.
How do you prevent violence when someone's mugging you on the street? How do you prevent that? I mean, there are economic programs, but what she meant about self-determination, it's what do you do? How do you stop the guy that's going to rob you? Do you just start going up to random dudes on the street and hand them money so that maybe they'll remember you when they decide to rob people? I don't know. I don't know if that'll work. That might make you the target. Like, if you got all this money you could just be handing out, well, fuck, I'll take it all, thank you.
Not necessarily the guns, it's the reason that people are using guns. The nuance is like, how do you tackle that, right?
I was gonna say, I think we glossed over the statement that you threw out there. You were like, so it's not necessarily the guns. I think it totally is the guns. There's a unique gun violence problem in America. We have...
Nope. Yeah, there's a gun violence problem in America because America has a unique access to a tool that other countries don't have. But it's not like crime doesn't exist worldwide. It's not like crime is not on the up and up worldwide. And if you think it is, if you think that other countries have such safe environments, I fucking implore you, find those countries. Explore them. Come back and report.
Per capita, way more guns than any other country. We have a unique problem, and it's not just domestically. And the reason why everyone here who does own or has guns, it's their weapon of choice because it is the gun, it is the most powerful weapon, it is capable of the most destruction, and that's why people gravitate towards it.
There's no changes to gun policy.
Well, you're half right. It's the AR-15 is an easy platform to use. But But so is the Glock. The Glock is a very popular weapon. And in a pistol platform, it's probably one of the easier guns to use as well. I mean, just saying.
Incredibly controversial and divisive. Like, how do we find that common ground and make changes that we can think might make a difference without triggering a second civil war in this country?
The United States Congress needs to remove all legislation that's introduced to absolve the gun industry of any accountability. And the American public needs to begin realizing that our elected officials are, in fact,
Oh, dear Lord, lady, you're still harping on the gun industry. Maybe she's taking my advice and finding the root of the problem. And I guess if you make the gun industry poorer than what they are, then maybe they're slower to manufacture guns. I don't know. I don't understand what this woman is on and on about. Why she thinks that harming the corporations that manufacture guns is going to change ultimately what happens in the hands of people who wind up with the illegal versions of those weapons.
advocating for such absolve of responsibility. And so I think that's very much the first step. The second step to this is, in fact, to begin producing mechanisms that would stop the gun industry from marketing and profiting in the way that it's been for so long.
I think if
Again, I'm trying to understand this marketing thing. Like, again, you turn on TV, you turn on Netflix, you're not seeing ads for guns. You're seeing movies that have guns in them. I mean, definitely, look, there are definitely full page ads in, like, was it, Trail and Stream magazine, or, your hunting magazines. There are definitely advertisements in there but they're going after the demographic of people who would own a gun anyway. Right? Your average fucking 12-year-old kid, their introduction to the gun industry is fucking Call of Duty or fucking the Bad Boys movie or whatever, It's not going to be a Field and Stream fucking magazine. They're not looking for those magazines. Your average inner city 12-year-old kid is not looking through fucking hunting magazines. They're just not doing that.
1,000 people were getting sick from some cereal brand every single year, and 40,000 of them were dying, the government would have stepped in immediately.
I call bullshit. You don't think we have things in our diet that are causing serious health issues? You don't think our government has approved certain things? I mean, again, I don't want to get too deep into conspiracies and conspiracy theories, but I think you're fooling yourself, dude, and you're trusting your government a little too much to do the right thing. I think you're trusting the same politicians you have a problem with being on the take when it comes to gun lobbies. I think you underestimate whether or not they could be on the take for certain other lobbies that are out there.
Right, and held that brand accountable. And that's what we're dealing with guns and gun violence. Historic numbers of lives.
It's really uncomfortable having this conversation. A lot of people wouldn't choose to unless they were personally affected by gun violence or had their safety at risk. And so I would encourage people to sit with the discomfort because it's everybody's problem. It's not just America's problem. It's actually a global problem.
What? I mean, am I imagining that she just said a whole bunch of shit without saying a damn thing, and that the only point she made was that it's a global problem when it, like, the whole argument is that it's not. Like, this is a uniquely American thing was part of the question. Like, it's not a global problem. Like, other countries have already taken the guns. Like, that's your side of the argument, was that we should be more like these other countries. And again, I think those other countries are in a dangerous spot right now. Some aren't. Some are.
Just kind of want to draw people's attention to the fact that there have been a lot of different views on this panel, and yet we are very much pushing for a safer society where fewer people are killed by guns. This is really important to the national conversation because this is what actually drives.
Fewer people, but not fucking zero. And it seems like anytime someone has an idea to advance the cause of fewer people dying, it's not good enough because it needs to be zero. No, that's not the way life works.
Thank you all for doing this. We put some really good ideas out there and hopefully change the way people will think about this issue. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming and doing this. Would you like to stand up?
Go for it.
All right.
Take your swing.
I think the biggest misconception about gun owners is that we're all the same. We're not all right-leaning. We're not all Christian, white, male. We look different. We have differing beliefs. I think it's really
Yeah. I mean, that's a real important thought to have here. Is if you don't realize that, yes, gun owners and gun advocates do come from all areas of society. You know, I personally know, a good friend of mine who definitely, he doesn't want his rights trampled either. And, he lives in a rough part of town. It's amazing to see that how privileged it is to just say, oh, well, we can just do without. It is. It's a privileged position to say that we could just do without. And chances are, if you're that kind of person, then you live in an area where police are probably more strict. Then you live in an area where, houses are probably built a little harder to break into, where you have other safety measures you can rely on. Or the guy was advocating, oh, get a dog, get a security camera. Well, yeah, if you can afford all those things. It's expensive to wire a house with security cameras. It's expensive to take care of a large animal. I mean, granted, it's expensive to buy and maintain a firearm, but it's even more expensive to take care of some of these other things that this guy was claiming was the solution.
great that those of us who are racially oppressed, who are gender oppressed, who are working people, are beginning to really show people what it means to defend ourselves.
Wait, what? I don't even want to know where she's going with that.
By the answers I heard, but I was surprised by the background of the people who were sharing some of the same answers that I heard from folks who are very pro-gun. I think at the end of the day,
You know what he's saying, right? Oh, I didn't expect a black woman to be pro-gun. Yeah. I bet you didn't. Because, that's the thing, is the people like you who you wouldn't assume would be bigoted like that probably are.
we all just want a safer society. Some of these like fairy tale land, get
Fairy tale land.
It's super important. I wonder who's gonna roast.
Yes, get training.
I would like to do some training with some of the women that I met tonight.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So we have reached the end. It is, we're now approaching 2 hours and 45 minutes on this video. If you like this video, oh look, it's you didn't see that. It's recommending the masculinity video. We've already done that. Thank you, Vice. So yeah, I do want to say thank you to Vice. I mean, fuck you, Vice, but thank you. Thank you for giving me some content and just a note that this has been a fair use analysis of Vice's copyrighted material. And thank you to everyone on the panel. Even if I vehemently disagreed with you, I respect your position. And I'm sorry if I called you names. I've been drinking a little bit. Please take it in the lightest spirit possible. I'm mostly just ribbing for online content. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up below. Check out all my social media below. Catch me next time. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the subscribe button to be notified when I have a future video that is going to go live here on the internet. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Catch you next time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Don't get any on you, and if you do, rub it in real good. Thank you very much. Peace.